Hi there, I'm Kate Wyatt from Paella Puppets and I want to welcome you to the Paella Puppet family. This video is for those that have bought a fish pattern from us, and I'm going to take you through the whole process. So stage by stage you can see how our lovely fish puppets are made. So first job, print out your pattern pieces and make sure that they fit nicely onto an A4. You should be able to print them, their instructions in the pattern for doing that. And then you need to cut them out, ready to use in your pattern. So you'll notice in the pattern that there are two patterns for the price of one. So you will have a simple fish, and also if you turn the pattern upside down and cut in the other colour, it is an anglerfish. And I'm going to show you the simple fish in this video, and later on we'll post another video showing you how to make the anglerfish. So the next thing to do is to cut out your pattern pieces, starting with the foam body pieces, A and B, and B and A. So those need sticking together. You'll notice that there's an extra little tab down here, and that's where you put the glue and overlap your fish pattern and sort of balance it out. There's a very minimal difference between the two, so you just need to position it correctly. So let's do that first. Okay, that was easy. Okay, so now you've got your foam pattern for your fish. You're going to need to get yourself some 1/2-inch foam. You'll see in the pattern that there is a recipe. So we're Paella Puppets, therefore we do puppet recipes, keeping with the theme. You'll see in the recipe all the different ingredients that you need to make your fish puppet. So there are also some foam pattern pieces for the tail and for the fins. Now you need, in the pattern as well, you'll notice you've got different designs for fins and tails, and it's really up to you which ones you want to use. So the one that I'm going to use on this one's got a rounded tail, but you've also got a larger sharp pointed tail and different shapes for the top fin as well. So depending whether you're using fleece or a more heavy duty fabric, you can actually line the tail and the fins with wadding rather than foam, and then add detail on the top. But again, I'm going to show you how to do that in the anglerfish video. I'm sticking to the simple in this video. So we're going to take our pattern piece and we're going to draw around it onto the foam and then cut our foam pieces out. Okay, so I'm going to use a permanent marker, not too dark. Doesn't really matter unless you're using a very pale fabric on the outside of your puppet, in which case some of the markings might show through. But I'm going to use fleece, and markings won't show through fleece, but I'm still using a colour Sharpie that I can see quite clearly. But that's not too dark. Okay, just before I go any further, you'll notice on the bottom of your foam pattern you've got two options for the hole at the bottom, a small one and a slightly larger one. So just have a think about whether you want the small one. If you've got a small hand, you're going to be using this puppet yourself, then go for the small one. If you've got a larger hand, go for the bigger one. I'm actually going to cut it for the larger hand. So I've just taken a little piece off, reposition it in the exact same place. There we go. Now you don't need to flip with the foam, but it is good practice to do so because it it just keeps you in the habit of flipping the pattern when it comes to the fabric pattern pieces, which you do need to flip over. Okay, so that's my foam body parts, which I need 2. This is the top fin, which I only need 1 of. And the side fin, which I need 2. I'm trying to conserve the foam as I place the pieces because it's not cheap, and you want to save as much as you can for other projects. So I'm putting the pattern pieces quite close together. We need 1 for the tail. Now I'm drawing right up to the pattern piece. With the fabric pieces, you've got the option, 2 options of where to cut, depending on whether you're sewing by hand or by machine, but I'll talk you through that when we get there. So, and then I'm going to cut them out with a pair of scissors. Now, some people use a sharp blade, but as I'm quite accident prone, as I say in every video, I use scissors, and scissors is fine. You just need to keep them quite upright. And you might need to do a little bit of trimming after you've cut to neaten the edges. Now, all your offcuts of foam, don't throw them away. They're very good for small details, noses, bags under or over the eyes, for applying glue, for cutting up into tiny bits and using as stuffing. So please don't throw it away. We like to encourage people to reuse and recycle wherever possible. So here are my foam pieces for the body, ready cut. You might need to do a little bit of tidying up around the edges because you want there to be a really nice flat surface for the contact adhesive to bond to. So if it's too squiggly, just do a little bit of tidying up with your scissors. Doesn't matter too much on the opening, but you want a nice smooth surface where possible everywhere else. And then, so we're going to put contact adhesive on the top and the bottom, not the opening and not the mouth and not the tail bit here, but everywhere else we go. That's 6 minutes for the glue to cure, and then I'm going to put the top of the fish together first by piecing it by the mouth. Then I'm going to put the tail bits together and then gradually working my way along the top of the fish. I'm going to squeeze the 2 edges together. And if you've let it cure the right amount of time, then it should stick together nicely. Okay, and go right along. Turn the fish over and do the same for the bottom of the fish, so starting at the mouth. You're not sticking the hole where your arm's going to go in to operate the mouth mechanism. Squeeze it together. And along the bottom. And then you have your fish body all ready for covering with fabric. So you don't need to do anything with the fins or the tail at this point. It's just the body that's going to be glued together. And the next job will be to cut out your mouth plate pieces, which we're going to make out of balsa wood. And you have a variety of choices of what you want to do here. These are the firm piece of the mouth plate, so it's easy to operate and doesn't wiggle or bend too much, okay, when you're operating the puppet. So we use balsa wood. We also sometimes use recycled materials, old, you know, those thin plastic chopping boards, or old boxes made from plastic. Just some of them cut well and some of them don't. So you just have to experiment a little bit. You can use ice cream cartons. They're a little bit thin, but gluing two pieces together, so two of the same on top of each other to make one plate, works quite well and is cheap. You get a bit of a bend in it, but if it's not going to be heavy use puppet, then that would be fine too. We're going to work with balsa wood though. So you'll see that there are two different pieces, one for the top, one for the bottom. And they are only very slightly different in size, but there is a difference. So be careful and make sure you label as you go. So you're going to draw around those onto a piece of balsa wood, and I've just put a T and a B so I know which is the top and which is the bottom. And then I'm going to cut those out with a Stanley knife, and obviously I'm going to put something underneath to protect the work surface and your table that you're working on. So either a self-healing cutting mat or even just a chopping board from the kitchen is just fine. Just to show you don't need to spend expensive mats if you haven't got them to hand. I'm going to do mine on a little chopping board. Just be very, very careful, obviously, with the Stanley knife as you're cutting. So I've cut out my two balsa wood plates. I've got them labelled top and bottom, so I know which is which. And then I'm just going to sand the edges gently to get rid of the rough bits. You don't want to have that rough bit against your hand inside the puppet. So sand the edges. We have our two mouth plates then nicely sanded and smooth at the edges, labelled. And we use this rubber sheet that you can get from Amazon. It'll be in the paella recipe. And we use it because it's non-slip, so against your hand it's really useful when you're operating the puppet. The fingers are not going to slip so easily around. So on the back of it, I'm going to draw around and cut out. And I also have some strips of felt which are backed with pelmet interfacing. You can also use straps that you can buy, like luggage straps and things like that, and cut them up. And it's going to be sewn onto these before these are stuck onto the wooden parts. So I'm going to use some strong cotton and I'm going to sew up and down the edge. If you've got a very big hand, you might want to create a bit of an arch. That's up to you. Your thumb won't need much at all. And I'm going to place them slightly in so that you can feel your way in with your fingers, like that. I'm going to use a nice strong cotton, so an upholstery cotton, in the hope that it won't come undone. I'm sure it won't. I did have it happen once, but ever since then I've been much more careful and made sure it's extra secure. So actually I'm going to do them that way down so that the nice soft felt is against your thumb or your fingers. Once you've sewn your strap onto your mouth plate, then you're going to peel the back of this if you've got the self-adhesive ones. If you haven't, then use contact adhesive on both sides and let it cure like we did for the foam. But I've got the self-adhesive rubber ones. Again, you'll see this in the paella recipe. And it's very sticky on the back. And you're going to position it onto your wooden mouth plate and stick it down. Now, for a little bit of extra comfort, I'm going to cut a couple of strips more of the rubber. Peel them. And then on the edge where your fingers are going to go in and out, I'm just putting an extra little bit over there just to hold it, because that's where your fingers are going to go in and out all the time. And I want to give it a little bit of extra security. Now sometimes I do find that the self-adhesive strips pull away at the edges, and so when I'm sticking the mouth plates to the foam, I'm going to put a bit of extra glue around the edge just to hold those in place. So just do the other one with the extra strip. And there's the mouth plate. And the next job is to stick it to the fish's mouth, the foam mouth. Two ways that you can do this. You can just stick it to the edge like this, or you can pull it round. I'm going to put a photo here so you see what I mean, the two different ways. For the ones where it overlaps and wraps round the mouth plate, you're going to position it on the inside and pull the glue edges over. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it flat for this one. There are other videos where I'll show you how to do the wraparound version, and some of our time-lapse videos, you can see that. But for this particular fish, I'm going to go with the flat, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So you apply glue to the edge of the inside of the mouth. And then corresponding glue, this is the top, to, if you're doing it flat, then you're going to do it to the inside top of the rubber side of the mouth, which means putting glue all the way around this edge. And remember I said that it might sometimes comes undone at the corners, so I'm going to add a little bit of extra glue at the corners too, just to reinforce it a little bit. And then I'm going to let those cure for 6 or 7 minutes. So these are cured now for 6 or 7 minutes, and I'm going to start to put them into place. And I'm just carefully pressing the foam into position. Hoping you can see that. Okay, so pressing it into place all the way around. Close the mouth. Be careful not to get it glued to each other. But there is your mouth plate in place, and you're going to, before you do anything else with this puppet, you're going to have to leave it for a good half an hour or so. Let the glue really dry solid before trying to do anything else with this part. I've had it in the past where I've been too hasty and things have just become unstuck. So give it a good half an hour now to dry thoroughly before you move on to the next stage. So the mouth plate is now well stuck down. Because I've stuck it flat and not put the foam over the edge like I do sometimes, I'm going to give it a bit of strengthening around, particularly around the corners of the mouth and around the join. So we've stuck rubber to foam, and that doesn't have such a strong bond as the wood to the foam. So I'm going to be using bias binding, which you can buy in handy little packs, and I've cut strips the right length to go along the edge of the mouth. But before I do that, I'm going to add some little strips just to the corner of the mouth to prevent the foam from tearing at the corner. Okay, so I'm going to use the contact adhesive for that again. So I need to apply, always with contact adhesive, it's going to stick to itself in effect. So I'm applying it to the back of the bias binding and the corner of the mouth. And once again, you know you've got to leave this to cure for around 6 or 7 minutes before putting the two sides together. And there we are, nice and neat. Next job will be to cut your fabric pattern out for the fish and then decide what particular design and colours you'd like to use for your fish. Now I've cut out the 3 pieces for the fabric pattern for the fish, and you stick A to B first and then you stick C to those 2 pieces joined together. And I'm going to use the green fleece for this simple fish. I'm going to cut 2 pieces. Stretch needs to go top to bottom of the fish. I'll pin it in place. You can double up or you can do singly. If you're going to cut singly, then you need to flip the pattern for the second piece. Now you can see on your pattern you've got 2 lines. You've got a solid line and a dotted line. If you're going to machine sew it, cut to the dotted line. If you're going to hand sew it, cut to the solid line. I'm going to machine sew it. Now if you've gone for the larger opening on the foam, remember we chose whether to go for the larger or the smaller in the bottom. So at the bottom of the pattern there's an extra line. So you cut to the solid line if you've gone for the larger opening on the bottom of the fish, which I did. There we are. So decide at this point what decoration and colours you want to add to your fish. So I think I'm going to do some stripes. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my original paper pattern. And I'm going to think about where I might put the stripes. I'm actually going to, I think we'll give you in the pattern some of these lines on a separate pattern piece for the fabric of the fish, so that you've got some lines to work to. But for now I'm just drawing these, but we're going to add some pattern pieces for you in the actual pattern. Okay, so I'm going to do blue for that one. And blue for that one. And obviously I'm going to need to do it for both sides of the fish. So you're going to cut one and flip it over, or we're going to fold the fleece. Now again, you need to find the stretch. So let's have a look at our fleece. It's not stretching that way, but it is stretching that way. So we're going to put right sides together this time to make it easier. And remember that the stretch goes from the top to the bottom of the fish. So that's the stretch.
Making sure I've got a wide enough piece. You might not want to do that. You might prefer, I'm just looking for my fish. You might prefer to add some detail afterwards. So do the whole fish one colour and then add some circles to the top. So we'll put some circle sizes in that are the right size as well. So you can choose to do it all one colour and then add details afterwards if you prefer. But I'm going to go for stripes with this one. That piece in there to help me get this in the right place. Is that the right one? No, upside down. There we are. So obviously I'm going to be doing the same with the other sides. Now, you've got two options here. You can hand stitch this in place if you like. You could maybe do some embroidery stitches along the edge, or a simple running stitch would do. An over stitch would be fine. You could machine zigzag along the edge. Either pin it very, very well, or bond the two pieces together with either a Pritt stick or a bonder web that you can buy on the internet, which is like an iron-on glue. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin it, and then I'm going to do some hand stitching along the edge to hold it in place. I'm going to work on the stripes now. So I've cut the pieces of fleece according to the pattern, and I've got to decide how to fix them, the blue pieces to the green pieces. You've got a variety of options. You can hand stitch them in place. I've just done a running stitch along there, but actually I'm going to zigzag with a contrasting colour on the machine. And the reason I've done a running stitch along there is just to hold it in place. So I'm just hand stitching in place first so that it doesn't move when I'm zigzagging on the machine. Now you don't need to do that first if you feel confident that you can keep the top fleece in place. The other thing you could do is use bonder web, which is a fusible bonding material you can buy, and iron it onto the back side of the top fleece, and then peel the paper off, iron it, and it sticks to the background. But I'm just saving a bit of money here, and I've only got a really sort of tough bonder web in stock, so I'm just taking my time and doing a bit of hand stitching. So I'm doing running stitches along the stripes just here and here, and I've just got to finish this little bit off. And there we go, that's nice and secure now. I can take the pins out. So I'm going to carry on and do the other piece and the stripes for the other side of the body as well. I've zigzagged all the stripes now. I went for yellow for the contrast, and now I'm going to put the two pieces right sides together, and I'm going to very carefully match the stripes. And you're going to stitch along here, and all the way along the top. But you're going to leave this open and leave the mouth open. Okay, so now I've sewn the fish, and I'm now going to put a mouth plate in and sew it on the machine. So I need to get the mouth plate pattern piece, which is here, and choose what I'm going to do for the inside of the mouth. Now we quite often go for felt. You can choose felt, other people use velvet sometimes for the inside of the mouth. We should try that actually, but we haven't tried that one yet. We generally just go for felt. Works quite well for us, and I've decided to go for a grey felt this time for this particular fish. So I'm going to cut this out. Because I'm stitching on the machine, I'm cutting to the dotted line. Okay, so you can see that on the pattern piece there's a top here. That's going to fit to the top seam on the fish's mouth, and I tend to pin it with the pins going towards the seam so I can leave them in and I can sew over. Now I just want to get the other point for the bottom. Sometimes I leave a little bump at these points when I'm cutting it out, but I haven't done so this time. And then I'm going to carefully fit this round the rest of the mouth and pin it as I go. Okay, and there we are. So that should look like that now, with all the pins all the way around to keep it nice. If you've got gaps and plenty of pins, stick another one in, because the last thing you want is for it to shift. Excuse me. If you've got any gaps, then feel free to stick more pins in. Just go carefully as you sew around the edge, going over the pins, because you don't want to break your needle on your sewing machine. Of course you can hand stitch it, but I would still pin even if you're hand stitching, because it just keeps it at a nice stretch for you. Okay, so I'm going to machine sew that now. Right, okay, so now we're ready to turn the mouth, okay, and turn the body inside out. So we've got the mouth stitched in place, either by hand or on the machine. We've got our mouth plate and our fish ready, and what we're going to do is we're going to add some contact adhesive. This time we are not going to let it cure, because we're going to need to work quickly. We're going to put glue around the outside of the mouth, so over the bias binding and over the wood as well, a little bit into the mouth. Okay, and also around the edge of the felt. Okay, and you have to work quite quickly at this point, and it's a little bit nervous and daunting because you're going to have to turn it quickly as well. Make sure your glue's out of the way, I have knocked glue over before now. And you get your hands inside each one and you match the seams, the top and the bottom. Push the mouth in and then clamp it shut. And then you're going to turn the fish the right way out. You have to work quite quickly because you don't want that glue to dry before you have had time to mess with the mouth. Okay, so you're going to pull it in shape. Don't worry about the rest of the fish yet. Concentrate on your seams and making sure that they match top and bottom. Okay, so I need to move the bottom along a little bit to the left. So doing all of this before the glue dries, hopefully, so you haven't got very long to do it. Okay, and when you feel you've got the seams in the right place, you can do the rest of the fish. Okay, but don't worry too much about that till you're sure you've got the head right. Okay. There we go, look at that. Looking good. Looking good, my friend. Good. I've got quite a good match at the top for the seams and not bad at the bottom either. We can do some neatening up when we're doing the hand stitching. That is not bad at all.